keep over in the new slide overview. It's really handy at being able to quickly drag and drop something or grab something out of it. It acts a lot like the desktop on a Mac or a PC. There's a lot of different shelf apps on the iPad, but Yoink is my favorite. I have 3 folders of apps in my dock. The first one being for work. I'm going to cover the notable apps in each of these folders. LumaFusion is the best video editor on the iPad, hands down. This is the app that allows me to work from the iPad. Only a couple of my first videos were edited using something else. The rest have been made completely using LumaFusion, including this video. I love what the developers have done with this app, and they have proved pro apps do work on the iPad. I'm able to have 6 video tracks and 6 audio tracks in the timeline. I'm also able to animate text, images, and more. You can also key out green screen content, use LUTs, and keyframe anything. It is a full-fledged video editor for everything I need. I'm working on a huge guide on how to edit with the app, but in the meantime I've been putting out smaller videos with walkthroughs on how I edit. Another pro app that is a must-have for me is Ferrite. Most of my podcast production and voiceover work happens here. First I record audio to Ferrite. This is how I get a clean local track to work with. Then I can create a project from that track and edit my audio in Ferrite. I can also add more tracks for podcast editing as well. A couple of really handy features for this kind of editing is strip silence, where it takes the audio and it cuts out all the blank parts. The second feature is Tighten, where it pulls all the audio closer together. Then finally, there's Balance Audio. This is great if you have a couple of tracks that were recorded in different locations. This will try and make them the same volume. If you're interested in podcasting on the iPad, Ferrite is a great place to start. In 2019, I got really into photography. This has become a serious passion of mine. I tried all the photo editing apps, and while Lightroom isn't the best more than I need, but it follows the most important rule, being a good iPadOS citizen. pCalc is one of those apps I always keep in slide over so I can get to it quickly. What makes pCalc great over other calculators is the care that goes into the app. You can change themes, pick from a bunch of cool icons. Also, probably swing by the About screen. I won't ruin the surprise, but you can thank me later. While the Files app is the primary way I work with files, I keep File Explorer around for tasks that the Files app can't do. What's great about File Explorer is it can connect to a lot more than just local storage and SMB shares. There's a whole host of supported connections through this app. While I don't use these often, I have found myself needing them a couple of times. If the Files app wasn't so baked into the system, this would be the main way I'd be interacting with files. I don't need it often, but I'm really happy that I have it when I do. If you find yourself connecting to a lot of different servers or hosts, maybe check out File Explorer. With iPadOS 13, there was a new API introduced to allow developers to install third-party fonts through an app and not relying on system profiles. Well, that hasn't really taken off, so I'm still using AnyFont to install third-party fonts when needed. I did a tutorial a while ago on how this works that I'll link below. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as the API, and it's not secure either, but there hasn't been really any useful apps to support third-party fonts, unless you have Adobe CC subscription, of course. TextCase, like a lot of these utility apps, isn't an app I use often, but it comes in handy when I need it. I use it to check the capitalizations of these videos, posts, or whatever. I know there are a lot of websites that do this for you, but through this app, I was able to make it so much simpler by, of course, using a shortcut. This just gets my clipboard, formats the text, and then adds the text back to my clipboard. Opener is another handy utility app. If you go to a page like YouTube or Twitter on Safari, hit the share sheet and select Opener. Then you can either pick an app, or if you only have one app that corresponds with that page, it'll open it, but it does work. Imusio is an app iOS film creators might find useful. This will go through and stabilize your video clips. This of course lowers the resolution of your video slightly and might add some warping, but it's better than having shaky footage. I've used this a few times and I doubt anyone could tell the difference. I have 2 areas where I launch my most commonly used shortcuts from. The first one is a folder down in the dock. These are action-based shortcuts that I want to use from anywhere in the OS. You might notice that these shortcuts have custom icons. I got these from MacStories. They recently started selling custom icons. I'll put a link in the description to where you can get them. The only slight downside is that you can only use them with shortcuts on your home screen. They won't show up in the app or the widget. This is a limitation of shortcuts and not the icons. But I really like them and they add a nice variety to shortcuts, especially considering I have a lot of different shortcuts. The first shortcut is my daily journal shortcut. I mostly use this through automation, but every once in a while, I want to run it manually, so I keep it here. This shortcut was a lot of fun to build, but more importantly, it's really helped me stay productive throughout my day. There are several ways I interact with it, but my favorite way is sitting down with coffee and my Apple Pencil and just filling it out. I did a whole video about this shortcut and what it took to build it that I'll link to. The next shortcut is actually a group of shortcuts inside a shortcut. I have a few of these in this folder. Instead of having pages of different one-off shortcuts, I made a shortcut that had a menu that ran other shortcuts inside it. This group is all around task management. When I run this shortcut, I pick a shortcut within it to run, then it runs that task. I have shortcuts to add stuff to a grocery list, my backpack travel list, create video projects, and more. A lot of these are geared around my projects or a bit more personal, but I'll link what I can so you can modify it if you want. The new video project shortcut has recently been changed. It uses Zapier and looks at my video projects base in Airtable. Once something has been marked as currently working on, Zapier sends a notification to Pushcuts, and then through that notification, I run this shortcut. It pulls the title from Airtable, and it makes a project and task right then. This is really handy for managing ideas in Airtable, but projects and things. I also have something similar for a new podcast episode, but this does a couple of steps more. When we mark an idea as currently working on, it updates our Google Doc. It looks at the previous published episode and then adds 1 to the episode number. That way, when it gets added to things, everything's formatted nice with the proper episode number. I'm already working on a Zapier and Pushcuts video where I'll go into more details on how this works. My bag checklist shortcut is an idea I got from the Automators podcast. This uses a dictionary with different categories. So when I'm packing, I run the shortcut and then select the different categories of items I want to bring with me. Expense tracking is a way for me to log my business expenses in 2020. This has a couple of ask for input actions regarding the transaction and then logs it into Airtable. I've talked about this one in the past, but I did recently make a change to it. It now uses an app called DataJar to hold all my API keys. It's currently in beta, but I'll
small comparatively. I've been using mine for the past week, so how has it held up after several rounds through my video production pipeline? Let's find out. I like it too much to slam it down, I'm sorry. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Spoilers, okay. Spoilers for the rest of the video. I actually really like the XPS 17, which that surprises me because as somebody that really loves getting as small a laptop as possible, I mean, if you had to ask me what my favorite laptop design of all time is, it's probably the MacBook Pro 13. I really thought that the much bigger size of the 9700 would seriously turn me off to this computer. But surprisingly enough, and most of all to me, I'm actually really enjoying this as both a work around different spots of my house, simulating actually going places because I can't go anywhere. I work from home now and I'm trapped in my house. But I'm also really getting comfortable plugging this into my dock and external monitor to get more of a desktop-y feel out of this. This video is not going to be a list of tech specs or benchmarks. If you would like to see a little bit more in-depth coverage, I'll leave a link to my playlist that covers a lot about the XPS 17, including comparisons against its main rivals, the MacBook Pro 16 and the XPS 15. I'll leave that playlist linked in the description below. What we're gonna do today is go over what I both really like and what I both dislike after using this as my main computer for the past week. And you know what? Let's start off with the negatives. I find starting off negative grounds us all in reality before I go super hyperbolic like Goku levels of XPS 17. But the XPS 17 is the first time I've personally had an occurrence or a run-in with one of those problems. This laptop shipped to me with 2 physical problems. One, the trackpad, I don't know if you can hear this, but the trackpad's kind of loose. It's kind of loose and it has a lot of inconsistencies when clicking or just trying to scroll around on it. And that is an issue that I've read about in the 15s, even though my personal 15 doesn't have that problem and is fine. The second issue I've had is there is a small dent. Can you see it? Can you, right there. Yep, right there. There's a small dent in the underside grill of the laptop that we found in the unboxing video, so I haven't had a chance to cause that issue, which I might because I do drop stuff all the time. Now for me, the dent on the grill is expensive creation gear, whether it be camera, computer, lens, anything. Buy it from a website/vendor with a reputable return policy in case you have these issues. And really quickly, as I'm working through the return policy on this 17-inch model, I'm getting a weird pushback from Dell when I submitted for my return. Now, what I want to do, this is kind of going to be like a rolling update as I go through the process. I will add email with, no, I don't want your technical support. Please just send me a shipping label. Then an hour later, I did receive that label. So there you go. Always check. Now, what is frustrating in that process is other retailers just give you the return form. I want to return an Apple computer, I submit for the return, it immediately shows up. They don't give me a runaround. They don't make me go through technical support first. Another thing that I don't really like, but is also kind of fixed, I don't like it, it's also not a problem. It's weird to explain. If you try to buy this laptop from the home side of Dell's website, you can't get the version with the RTX 2060 and the 1080p panel. You only have the option of the 4K touchscreen, which sucks because I don't necessarily want to pay for that battery drain and touchscreen of a resolution that I'm not gonna use. I don't wanna pay for stuff like that because I don't want it. And it kind of sucks that that's your only option. But if you go over to the business side of the house, you can find that exact model, 2060, 1080p. So don't play coy with us, Dell. Move that over to both product lines. Make them equivalent. Next thing that I don't like has to do with the physical design of the laptop. And the physical design will be a positive later, so just stick with me. This could get awkward. You'll no doubt know that I'm a discerning typist. I'm pretty tough on my needs for typing, whether it's a computer or a word processing tool that I use. The XPS 17 has a fine keyboard that we'll talk about more in a little bit, but this edge right here, this edge of the laptop body is actually kind of sharp. I mean, not like cut yourself sharp or shave with sharp, dad jokes, but it's sharp enough, and the body is just a little bit bigger than the 15. It's just big enough to be uncomfortable to type on. It's too big to like align your hands in any way to miss this edge. And at least for me, you know, I want to type. And as somebody that's always typing, I do. Dell, I want to type. Please, I want to type. Make this a little more comfortable. And the last main thing that I don't like about the XPS 17 is about Dell's audio software enhancements that they include standard. It's just weird. Like, why do it? It gives a lot of weird snaps and pops when playing games. Now, I don't have an issue when I'm watching YouTube videos or even editing these videos, but I did want to play some video games, and I started working towards my 7th playthrough of Portal 2. Man, I've played that game a lot. The audio was just bad. You uninstall those enhancements as soon as you can. You may not be using this for video gaming, but you could if you wanted to. Okay, blah, that's enough about the negatives. They are important because nothing in this world is perfect, because I prefer to dwell on positives, because darn it, technology today is really, really good. And the first major thing that I like about the XPS 17 is the performance. The performance on hand is fantastic. Everything is quick, snappy, responsive, all sorts of descriptors that I could continue combing through a thesaurus to find, but I won't. It's fast. Not only is it fast for daily tasks like web browsing stuff, but I find video editing to be an actual really good experience without any caveats. There's not like it's good, but it's just good. Now, I personally bought the version with the 1650 Ti, and while it's not my preferred graphics card, it does a fantastic job in both photo and video editing, and that's what I use my computers for. And when I say fantastic, this, even though it does not have the specs to stand up to my MacBook Pro 16, it did much better than my MacBook Pro in the same tasks. Now, I don't have any numbers to back this up, but I used Photoshop and Premiere Pro to do work on the past few videos, and both programs were far smoother on the 17. And when it comes to video editing, not only was the editing, coloring, and audio processing faster, but the render itself was darn near twice as fast as doing the same thing in Premiere on my MacBook. I mean, it was good. And when comparing Final Cut Pro X, it was still faster to render in Premiere on the XPS. That's real impressive, as I've long considered Final Cut Pro on the Mac to be the default speedy video renderer, especially if you're looking for a laptop. I mean, desktops, sure, you can have way beefier components and cooling systems there. I thought laptops were Mac's domain. And I'm just seeing that my table's busted. On that performance note, I really like the vapor chamber cooling system. I don't think it's specific or unique to the XPS 17, but it works really, really darn well. And it's part of the reason that this laptop can be so small and yet have really good thermal performance. During my quick bouts of gameplay and my several hours of video editing, some H.265 files from a Canon 1DX3. This laptop did not play well with that. Learn, if you're gonna use this with high-end codecs like that, learn to create proxies, people. I don't know who originally came up with this cooling system, but honestly, I want it in every laptop I buy from now on. If I'm buying a laptop and I have an option to get a vapor chamber in it, I will pick that laptop. This XPS is so much better thermally than my 15-inch, and my 15-inch has a weaker and smaller core count CPU. The next thing that I like about the XPS 17 is the size. And much like I said in the beginning, I thought the size of this computer was going to be too much. Way back in the day, what, like 2006, 2007, I had a 17-inch Dell laptop, and it was like permanently bolted to my table in my desk because it was way too big and way too heavy to actually take anywhere. But this is actually like a 15-inch laptop that just so happens to have a 17-inch screen and 17-inch internals. And it's not gonna click for you. Watching this video, it's not gonna click for you until you can go out and get it in your hand and try it out. When you see it on a website by itself or in a YouTube video, that does not do it justice, and it does not get across just how small of a big laptop this is. And a lot of that has to do with the display. And as we're talking about display, I continue to love the display on this laptop. Much like the 15-inch, this new panel is crazy. Like, it's legitimately incredible, and one of the best things Dell's done here by far. Almost no bezels while still fitting in a webcam, albeit not a great webcam, but a webcam nonetheless. This is really impressive stuff. It's just one of many little nice engineering touches that add up to an overall great laptop experience. Another really great engineering touch that I like, which we talked about earlier, is the carbon fiber build of this body itself. It looks great, and it just feels great when you're typing or you're messing around with the body of this laptop. You might think that's weird, like, who cares what the laptop feels like? It's all about performance and price. But for me, the body of this laptop is exactly what I need. That is, again, much like the vapor chamber, I need every computer I use from now on to have this. My display is connected through Thunderbolt 3. I have the power cable ready to go. It's all right on my desk, just ready to go without any muss or fuss. It's also really nice that if you do need USB-A or HDMI, Dell includes that dongle in the box. You might not want to use a dongle, but at least you don't have to pay for it. The display connection for my MacBook Pro to get USB-A and HDMI, it costs $60 to do the same thing. This just came in the box. Thank you. And the last thing that I want to talk about today is, much like the XPS 15, this laptop looks incredible. I'm a pretty simple person. I don't really care for all of the RGB that goes around in the computer scene. I don't like that. I don't like flashiness. I'm also a professional office worker. I have to be taken seriously. I love the aluminum look of the outer chassis. I think it contrasts well with the black carbon fiber. The slim design and the bezels make this look futuristic without needing to have graphics or lights or fog machines built into it. This looks like a high quality professional device that you won't get laughed at a meeting for having. And as an adult, that is important. And I just like that in a device that I spent so much money on. Much like the MacBook looks fantastic and very professional, I think Dell's done a great job making this match that aesthetic in their own way. But at the end of the day, so what, right? Would I recommend the Dell XPS 17? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I recommend this computer, so long as you buy it from a place that will let you return it if you do have a problem with the trackpad. That's the one thing. You have to protect yourself. This computer is powerful, it's sleek, it's not. Work through my thoughts on each. Click right here. Click, 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 click. Thanks for watching. Dell has now totally revamped their XPS line with a series of 3 laptops. The smallest 13-inch 9300, the mid-range shockingly small 15-inch 9500, and the big boy of the bunch, the 17-inch 9700. If you were looking for one with a dedicated graphics card, you really are though limited to the 15 and the 17-inch options. So which of these two should you get if you were looking for a travel productivity laptop? Let's find out. Okay, I'll slam one down. What's up, everyone? I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. These 2 laptops are actually pretty exciting for me. You probably know that because I talk about them constantly now. These are the first laptops that I've considered to replace my MacBook. And as a pretty big Apple user for the past 3 years, That's no mean feat. That is no mean feat. I've never actually considered straying from my path before these two computers came out. Now, they are very similar inside, but they're today. First up though, let's very briefly cover the internal specs on display for both of these tiny yet powerful computers. The XPS 15 does have a couple of levels, but at its base model, this comes equipped with a quad-core 10th generation Intel i5 processor, 8GB of DDR4 RAM, integrated Intel graphics, and a 256GB internal solid-state drive. You can take this demure package and spec it all the way out to an 8-core 10th gen Intel i7 processor, 64GB of RAM, an NVIDIA GTX 1650 Ti, and a 2TB solid-state drive. That's pretty beefy for such a small laptop. I do have an option because I do think that would be too much for the thermals to handle. Much more on the thermals later. The XPS 17, on the other hand, is very similarly spec'd at the base model with practically the exact same option. The 4-core i5, 8GB of RAM, integrated graphics, and 256GB solid-state drive. And though I'm like the base model person, I always recommend base models, I do not recommend the base model of the 17. If you just want an i5, get the 15-inch. Unless you just love, like if you love just having a bigger laptop, I don't know. I'm kind of torn when it comes to portability. The XPS 15 is so much smaller, so I'll probably have to give the portability category to it, but you really do get used to the extra size of the 17 really quickly. Don't be scared and you think that this is too big of a laptop. Next up, let's quickly touch on the battery, because that's like an addendum to the category regarding portability. If you're always going to be plugged into the wall, then I don't know, maybe just get a desktop. The battery sizes on the two devices match up with their bigger size chassis. The XPS 17 has a 97 watt-hour battery, and the XPS 15 has a smaller battery. But because this has bigger specs, bigger screen, bigger stuff, you're gonna get a pretty even battery life on both of these. But like I said earlier, you will suffer a hefty performance penalty if you are going to be running strictly off that battery. Both of these computers though do charge through USB-C between their 3 and 4 USB-C ports, which I think we can all, like as humanity, agree that USB-C charging needs to be the standard from now on. I don't even mind that USB-C has replaced most other sorts of ports, except the one that we'll talk about here in a second. Well, okay, we'll talk about it now. The SD card, it's important. I love that it's on here. Moving away from portability, kinda, sorta. Either way, let's talk about the display on both of these machines. They're amazing. The displays on hand here are amazing. There is no other way to put it. I absolutely love what they've done here. The display on the XPS 15 and 17 come in two flavors of 16:10 aspect ratios, a 1080p-ish and a 4K-ish touchscreen panel. And it's in these really thin bezels that it really lets the computers be as small as they are. The bezels are almost like nothing, and while it looks darn great on the 15, it's mind-blowing on the 17-inch. I don't mean to overly hype these displays because I talk about them a lot in these videos, but seriously, the best part about these computers, and I think a large part of the allure and buying decision if you're gonna be looking at one of these as a laptop, is how small of a bigger laptop you can get. The 17-inch display is big enough that when you sit down to work on it, you do not see the edges. You have to pull your attention away from what you are doing to notice that this screen has an abrupt plastic edge to it. I'm telling you, the lower the resolution on the display, the less power the panel will consume. So I also do not recommend going with the 4K option, as from this viewing distance, the odds that you'll actually be able to see the difference in the pixels, but you will absolutely notice the difference in battery life. And again, laptops are meant to be portable. Another thing that's really turned into a battleground in the portable computing experience is the speakers. Both of these do have very similar audio setups with side-mounted top-firing speakers. Now, I do think both of these sound perfectly fine. I'm not an audiophile. For spoken voices though, like editing this video, both of these speakers are perfectly fine, and I think they sound fantastic, and they do have enough clearness and bass. I haven't been using my headphones here in the studio to edit on these. I would use them if I was out and about traveling, if I could travel right now. And thankfully, both computers do have a 3.5mm headphone jack built into them. While we're talking about the speakers, since they're so close to them, let's move a little bit into talking about another huge aspect of laptops, the keyboard and the typing experience. Okay, I need you guys to buckle up here because as an office worker and somebody that types several thousand word scripts many times a week, typing is kind of my wheelhouse. That's kind of the thing that I have experience in and I really am a connoisseur of. Both of these keyboards are the exact same. They have the exact keys, the exact same size, and they have the same travel and the same color. You could take one, replace it with the other, and you would not notice. They both do feel a little mushy if you were used to typing on a MacBook. But it's not all that bad, and once you get into a typing rhythm, it doesn't feel sluggish or slow anymore. And thankfully, I mean, the keyboard itself, like these keys, are not gonna hold you back while you're typing. But there is a difference, and it is notable, and I do want to mention it here. And it's because of the size of these computers. Both these computers, while we're talking about it, they are covered with a black carbon fiber that looks and feels and I do find it an uncomfortable experience. Over here on the 15 though, the way that it's set up, like I've got this crook for me, like right here, that where when my hands are set on the keyboard, it's much more comfortable to type. And I actually, the XPS 15 might be in the running for my favorite typing experience of all time. And it's right up there. It is right up there with the MacBook Pro 13, which is my absolute favorite typing experience on a computer. Let's quickly mention, talking about like the body of the computer, let's talk about the trackpad that they share between them. This is much bigger than any other Windows laptop that I've ever seen. This is about as MacBook as you can get without actually having a MacBook. Now there have been some quality control issues that I've seen on the internet between the two models. But Dell has promised that all future models that if you buy today, that you won't have a problem with the trackpad. Now personally, my 15-inch works great and I haven't had a single problem with this trackpad. But the 17 does feel a little loose to me. I mean, this does feel like a little loose in the trackpad area. And I will probably return this to try to get a model with a better trackpad. And that's disappointing, but that's why I always recommend that you buy your gear from a company with a reputable return policy. It's very important so that when you have issues like this, you're not stuck. I don't feel stuck with this laptop. I'm going to return it to get a better one. So overall, I will give body of the computer to the XPS 15. Something to note quickly, but I don't want to dwell on, is both of these computers have upgradable RAM and M.2 NVMe slots. They both have 2. While that sounds similar, under the hood, it's actually a little different, and it's a little different in a big way. The XPS 17 actually has 2 fully featured drive holders on both of its M.2 ports, where the 15 has 1, and it's for the included solid-state drive. But you have to source a holder or a screw yourself if you do want to put a drive in that second slot. And that's kind of a pain. If you're gonna have those ports available, please just give me the holders. Like, give me the ability and the capability to upgrade the device. If you're gonna say it's upgradable, make it so I don't have to buy something additional. I mean, I do have to buy the drives, but the drives don't come with holders. Have this come with it. Now, that's not to say that upgrading either computer is difficult. It's not. It's very, very easy, and we've done it twice now here on the channel. We've upgraded both of these computers, but I am absolutely going to give the upgradability category win to the 17 because of those pre-included covers with the pre-installed thermal pads. Since we're already under the hood, let's talk about another thing that's really key for computers, but this is absolutely a buying decision level difference in laptops, and that's the thermal performance. Like we mentioned in the spec overview, the biggest difference thermally between the two is the XPS 15, no matter what model you buy, has a more traditional heat pipe running system that has a heat pipe from the fan running over the components that need to be cool. And it's worked perfectly fine for me in the last month, but it does dance really closely to the edge of thermal performance, sometimes touching 90 degrees while video editing before the fans really kick in. And it has thermal throttled a couple of times for a few seconds on me. The XPS 17 has a new vapor chamber cooling system design that takes up most of the bottom and back of this computer, and it works fantastically well. Now, I was concerned that my 17-inch might have an issue because it has a more powerful CPU and a dedicated GPU, unlike my base model 15, but I shouldn't have worried at all. I've had excellent thermal performance out of this machine, and even when doing both 4K video editing and rendering in Premiere Pro, the thermal temperature stays very consistent and well under what I would consider to be a problem. I have had this thermally throttle in one occasion. That's when I tried to play some 4K H.265 10-bit files from a Canon 1DX Mark III, and then that just ramped the CPU to 11 while trying to play it back, and the computer did not enjoy that, so I do not recommend doing that for obvious reasons. And the last major thing that I want to talk to you about today is if you can only have one computer that does double duty as a travel machine, but also your only home computer, how do they stack up? Like we said earlier, the XPS 15 has 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports and 1 non-Thunderbolt 3 USB-C port that you can use for charging, while the 17 has 4 ports that are all Thunderbolt 3. Now, both of these, because they have Thunderbolt 3 ports, they will work with something like my Cal 3 dock, and I have been plugging them into that dock for all of that. And I think with the port selection, additional thermals, and even the more powerful GPU options, the XPS 17 is clearly a better desktop replacement if you just refuse to have a desktop. But at the end of the day, so what, right? Which of these laptops comes out on top? I've said that I like both. Which one do I prefer? When I first got the 15-inch in, I was legitimately and still am impressed by how powerful this could be, despite being basically a 14-inch or even smaller laptop. And when the 17-inch came in, it did seem too big to me when I first started using it. But after a week of solid use, I think the 17-inch is one of the best computers I've ever used. It's very powerful, fits in even 15-inch laptop bags, the thermals are great, and if you can get one with a good trackpad, I easily recommend this over the 15-inch because you're gonna spend about the same amount to get the same components. I easily recommend the 17-inch unless you just have to have the smallest, lightest option around. The 17-inch, I love this computer. And if you like this video and you want to see how the 17-inch stacks up against my current laptop of choice, the MacBook Pro 16, click here to find out which one comes out on top. Click, 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 click. Thanks for watching.